Hello, my name is Blake. Welcome. Today I am going to be doing a tag video, and I don't do these very often, but I've done like 2 in the last month. And I initially had something very different planned for this video, but then I realized my birthday is coming up in a few days. It's April 30th. So I don't know if this video will go up on my birthday or not, but I thought I would do something different. And I saw Carrie from Carrie Can Reads did a tag video titled Where My Lore Started, similar to that Instagram, Bookstagram trend that's going around where people have like Where My Lore Started and they like show the movies and TV shows that they watched growing up. But this one is about books, and I just thought that was a perfect way to celebrate my birthday, to kind of reflect on the books that I read as a kid and kind of just every book that made me the reader I am today. And there are 12 questions. I'll leave them down below, and I will leave Carrie's video linked as well. Thank you for making this video, Carrie. And question 1 is, what was the first book you remember reading by yourself? I had some difficulty like answering this question. I can't remember if it was the first book exactly I remember reading. I've been reading for as long as I can remember, but my earliest memory of like actually reading was Frog and Toad. I remember like sounding out the words and like the sounds coming together, and I just remember like how magical that felt, and just, I was hooked immediately. And of course there were a lot of other books that I read. Anything with animals I just loved. The Wind in the Willows, I read that very early. Tales of Despero, and I had like a leapfrog learner, and like you would have like the pen and it would point to the words. And that's, whenever I think about like my first time reading, that's mostly what I remember. But like I read those so many times, I think I memorized the words. I don't think that I actually was reading them. But of course there were like a lot of Disney books, and I do like remember I loved my Leapfrog Learner. And I also later on started getting into like those chapter books, like the Magic Tree House books, and I read quite a bit of Junie B. Jones. So yes, those. And of course, I can't really talk about my earliest books without talking about Harry Potter. I initially debated not including Harry Potter in the video because of the author's very hateful views, but I feel like it would be dishonest and disingenuous to talk about my love of books without talking about Harry Potter. Like, it just wouldn't feel right to not include it. It's my favorite book series. I reread it every year, and my mom read those books to me every night before bed, and I would have her read them to me over and over and over again until she would just hate them and she'd ask me to pick something else. And before long, we would have to come back to it because I was just begging for more of that book. And we would just like read a chapter or 2 every night and discuss it. And those are like some of my earliest memories with books. Question 2, what character did you most identify with in elementary school? And I think this is a great follow-up question to question 1. And the character that I most related to was Hermione from Harry Potter and Susan from the Chronicles of Narnia. I'm the oldest sibling, and I've always been very studious. I've always been a very curious person. I, growing up, asked a lot of questions, probably much to the annoyance of everyone around. And I was like a very organized person. I was very much a perfectionist, and I really wanted to make sure that everything was perfect. So I feel like I really related to those characters. I saw a lot of myself in those characters. They're kind of both in situations where they are out of place, and I feel like growing up, I too felt very out of place. So I think just that's part of it. I also really loved the Weasley family growing up. The Weasleys are a very poor family, and I grew up rather poor as well. And I just love that the Weasleys were portrayed as being a poor family, but having a lot of like love in their life, having a very loving family. And that was something that I really related to as well. And Ron Weasley was my first crush, so I feel like I can't really talk about the Weasleys without talking about Ron, who is my favorite character. And I distinctly, very clearly remember Ron Weasley being my favorite character and being my first crush as a kid. So I had to include him here as well. Question 3. What was your elementary school comfort book? I had so many. I did a lot of rereading, like at that time. Just anytime I found something that I liked, it became like my whole personality, and I never wanted to move on from that thing. So like there were a lot of animal books that I really loved, the Warriors Cats books, and I think that series is like still ongoing, which blows my mind. But like I loved those Guardians of Gahul, Redwall. There's also the Spiderwick books, and I remember I also read Aragon and the Chronicles of Narnia when I was very young. And I remember for both of those books, the trailers released for the films. And my mom bought me the Aragon book, the first one, and she bought me a Chronicles of Narnia bind-up book, which is, I think it's on my favorites shelf. But I saw the trailers. They looked amazing to me. And I read Aragon in preparation for the film. And as soon as I finished the book, I remember I turned back to the very first page and started it all over again. And I read that multiple times in preparation for the film to come out. And then I read it as soon as I watched the film. And I just had like such an incredible time with that. And I am an Aragon film apologist. I think that the movie was fine. I don't know why everyone hates it so much. Very different from the books, but like overall, I think it's a solid film. So I guess it's an unpopular opinion. But also, The Chronicles of Narnia, I read the entire series in preparation for the first film. And The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was my favorite of the series. And after the film, like I watched and read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe so many times. I also remember The Secrets of Nim and The Chronicles of Prydain. And I loved The Chronicles of Prydain. I remember that was like a very distinct turning point for me as well. I loved the film The Black Cauldron. That was my favorite Disney movie. And those books inspired the film, although it was nothing like the film. I loved those books, and that was like there was something about them to me as a kid that felt very grown up, very adult. So I'm not sure what it was. Like they are children's books, but like they were very dark in tone. And I think that was like one of like the first books I remember reading that had like that dark tone to it. And I remember feeling like very grown up reading it. And I remember I really went through like a Cornelia Funke phase. And she had like these little chapter books called Ghost Hunters. And I remember reading those really young. I think it's about a boy who's busting ghosts with his grandma. I remember having like such a great time with them. I remember reading them with my own grandma. And I loved those, and I read them like multiple times in the month of October. And I loved the Igraine the Brave book, Thief Lord, Dragon Rider, and then later I went on to read Inkheart, and I really enjoyed those as well. And then I remember really loving the Ranger's Apprentice series, and there was also a series called The Last Apprentice, and I think in the UK it was called Spook's Apprentice. But it's about the seventh son of a seventh son, and he's the assistant to this man who's a spook, and he like slays supernatural beings, and that was like really eye-opening for me. I loved the Septimus Heap series, and I can't remember the name of the author, but like I see the covers in my mind, and I don't think that I finished either of those series, but in the Septimus Heap series, it's about a seventh son of a seventh son who's an apprentice to an archmage, and I just remember those worlds being so magical. I remember reading The Golden Compass, and I just fell in love with world building, although at the time I didn't know it was called world building, but like there was something about the world of The Golden Compass that I loved. And then I thought book 2 was okay, and then I DNF'd the third book because it made me so mad, and I still remember being mad at the third book and why I DNF'd it. So, very interesting the way that I remember some of these things. And I also remember the Cirque du Freak series with the vampire assistant, like the traveling circus. That was a weird one. But like, I loved it. And I don't know that I finished any of those last couple that I mentioned. I'll have to check, but I don't think so, which kind of makes me sad. And of course, I liked Percy Jackson. How could I forget that one? Question 4. What or where was your safe space as a kid? It was always reading for me and going to the library. My mom took me to the public library frequently. We went a couple of times a week, and I loved the school library as well. I remember I felt so uncomfortable at school. I didn't feel like myself there. I remember like at gym or recess or lunchtime. Those were like the worst times of the day for me. I feel like I didn't know like where to go or who to sit with or who to talk to. And I would frequently sneak away to go to the library, like just between like walking to recess or walking to the gym. My class was like next door to the library. So in the line, I would just sneak into the library and I would stay there until they brought the kids back. And I'm pretty sure the librarian, Miss Sherry, definitely knew I wasn't supposed to be in there, but she never said anything to me about it. And she just let me stay. So I very much appreciated that. But like, I feel like I felt so comfortable and confident in the library as a kid. Question 5. How has your taste in books changed since childhood? It really hasn't changed any. I've always predominantly read fantasy. I think that's part of the escapism for me. I just love feeling like I'm somewhere else. I love being in a new world and exploring a new place. And I think that's definitely part of it. As you can tell from my comfort reads, I had a very niche taste, and I still have the same taste now. Question 6. Did you feel inspired to read by your school? And if yes, how did your upbringing encourage reading? My school never had library time. They didn't really encourage us to go to the library, but they did have an AR reader program. Essentially, you read books and you take a quiz on a computer, and then it gives you points. And the more points you have, the more rewards you get. If you get 5 points, you get a pencil, and then there's a folder. And I remember you got a pencil case. And then if you had reached a certain level, you got these free pizza slips, and you got a personal sized pizza. And at one point, I had so many free pizza slips, I was able to get my entire family personal pizzas, and that was my goal, was to constantly get those pizzas. So that was something that we had. And at the end of the year, depending on how many points you had, you got to go on special field trips, and we got to go to the movies, and we got to go to a bowling alley. And it was only the top group got to go, and I always remember I was I have to be the top to get all the field trips. Question 7. What book have you wanted to return to lately? I feel I would reread any of those comfort reads that I mentioned earlier. Chronicles of Prydain, Chronicles of Narnia, the Inkheart books. Also those apprentice books. Ranger's Apprentice, Last Apprentice, the Septimus Heap books. I don't think I finished them, and part of me wonders if I did, and I kind of wonder if I would still enjoy them. Last year I did some rereading, and I went back and I reread. Oops, sorry, my cat hit the tripod. Last year I went back and I read Golden Compass and the Percy Jackson series, and I was incredibly worried about rereading them. But they still held up in my mind. I thought they were still really good. So I feel in my mind I'm a lot more open to rereading things. Cirque du Freak is another one where I'm I kind of want to reread it because I remember it being so bizarre. And I also know that this is the 20th anniversary of Twilight. And like I've been seeing covers for it everywhere. And part of me wants to go back and reread that. It was like such a standout book in my early teens. And I remember I read it after my first breakup, and it was like a big deal and like big part of my healing process. And all of my friends read it with me, and we went to see the movies together, and we had like the merchandise. And then I remember my second breakup. I remember also rereading Twilight after that. And I was 17 at that time. So it has been a decade since I have read it. And part of me wonders what adult Blake thinks about Twilight now. And question 8, your favorite or formative YA series? I remember middle school was definitely like the era of paranormal romance, like Twilight, Vampire Academy, Vampire Diaries. There was like that one series I remember. I very clearly remember the covers. Like the first book is called Marked, I think. I want to say the series is called House of Night, but I could be wrong. All of my friends like read these books together with me, like the Shadowhunters books, Fallen, The Wolves of Mercy Falls, all the paranormal stuff. We buddy read it together, and we had a really great time reading it. And then I remember there was like a distinct shift from like the paranormal romance craze to dystopian. And then we were like reading Hunger Games and Divergent, and we read The Maze Runner, Delirium. We consumed all of the dystopian genre as well, just whatever we had available. Question 9, a book you had to read in school but you loved. I didn't like very many of the books that we had to read in school. Like I remember my teachers reading to me, and I liked those books. I'm from a very small rural area, and so like a lot of teachers cover multiple grades, and I had the same teacher for 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade. His name is Mr. McMillan, and every day for 30 minutes he would read to us in the morning, and then for the car rider pickup he would read to us then as well. And if it was raining outside and we couldn't go to recess, he would read to us then too. And that was just my favorite part of the day. Like I loved having my teacher read to me, and he had like a really great voice. I remember he would do all these different characters and accents, and like I can still hear his voice in my head, like if I try to picture it. And he had a blackboard, and he would write on it with a chalk. And sometimes he would like draw out scenes with stick figures and make all of us laugh. And that's something that I remember. But he read so many good books to us. He read Hoot, Holes, Stuart Little, Charlotte's Web, The Never-Ending Story. That was a really popular one. We watched the movie after it. And he also read things like Bridge to Terabithia, all of the Beverly Cleary books, Hatchet, Because of Winn-Dixie, Shiloh. I feel like just like a lot of books that were popular at the time, like he really knew like what was going to be a hit or not. And I remember we just had a really great time reading those books in his class. And then my English teacher for 6th, 7th, and 8th grade was Miss Jennifer. And she was always my homeroom teacher as well. And every day for 30 minutes in homeroom, she would read to us. And she had some good picks as well. We read all of the Giver Quartet in our English classes. She also read Was it Looking for Alaska? I think so. I think it was Looking for Alaska and The Fault in Our Stars. She also read us The Outsiders. And we read The Hunger Games in class with her. And Tuck Everlasting was also another one that we read with her as well. But then in high school, I had this teacher, Miss Spencer. I feel like that class kind of ruined my reading for me. I remember we celebrated, I think it was her 72nd birthday. And she was very old. She couldn't see or hear at all. And she was constantly losing people's homework assignments. Like, you had to turn in the same assignment like 3 or 4 times because she was constantly misplacing them or losing them. But she was incredibly nice, but she really loved the classics. And I did not love the classics. So, like, we had to read Moby Dick, and, like, right after that, we had to turn around and read Leo Tolstoy. And we read Great Expectations at one point. But, like, we didn't read the whole book. We read, like, snippets of the book. And I remember being absolutely miserable reading them because I hated that reading experience. And every day we would just come in and silently read, and we would have to write a paper on what we read. Like, that was what we did. And we did that for weeks for each, like, snippet that she gave us to read, whatever the assignment was. And I just remember I was so incredibly bored in that class. And I normally loved my English classes, but not that one. And I quit reading for a while because I just had such a terrible time in that class. Like, the class wasn't hard, and, you know, I think she gave everybody 100 on everything. But I don't remember, like, having a good time reading, and I thought that I didn't like reading anymore. And I stopped reading for a time because those books were so bad that I just was like, I don't think I like reading anymore. But then in high school we read other things. Animal Farm and Alice in Wonderland. I enjoyed those. We also read a lot of Edgar Allan Poe, like a lot of his short stories. And I remember those being pretty good. And we read H.G. Wells. We read a couple of his works as well. And I remember, like, having a good time with those. But that was with a different teacher. And I also remember I enjoyed Antigone and the Crucible. Question 10, your weirdest favorite book. For this one, it has to be Cirque du Freak. Like, there are so many things about that book that I still think about today, and I'm like, that was really weird for a kid's book. Like, there are aspects of, like, cannibalism, or, like, people, like, having their faces ripped off, and part of it is, like, did I make that up? Because I wonder, I'm like, how is that allowed in a children's book? So, like, I wonder if my mind made it more gruesome than it actually was, or, like, if it really happened, because I'm unsure. Also, the Last Apprentice book was also pretty out there. Like, it was very dark. And that was pretty gruesome as well. Question 11. If your 13-year-old self could live in a fictional world, which would it be? Is it different from the world you would choose now? I would have lived in any fictional world at the age of 13. Hogwarts, Narnia, Camp Half-Blood, Prydain, the Shire. I would have lived there too. And my answer is no different today. Like, reality just doesn't suit me. Like I said, I read for the escapism, and these books just give me great escapism. And the last question here is there a newly released book you wish you had when you were younger? And I'm going to go with the Morrigan Crow books by Jessica Townsend for this one. It's about Morrigan, who is supposed to die on her 13th birthday because she's a cursed child. And instead, she gets whisked away to this magical land. And she discovers that she has magical powers. And she lives in this enchanted hotel with the man who rescued her. And he's like her teacher. She's like his apprentice. And he has just all these kooky friends. And he's very weird. Jupiter North. I just love him. And there is a giant cat, and there's an octopus chair, and she goes to this magical school with her magical friends. And I don't know, as a kid, I loved a magic school setting, and I would have loved that book as a kid. I love it now as an adult, but, like, just, I would have loved it then too. And it really captures, like, the magical feel of a magic school. And they have, like, tournaments and trials that they have to compete in. And I loved a trial setting as a kid. And they also, just the descriptions for summer, like the summer afternoons, and, like, it writes Christmas and Halloween so well. And that is something that I so vividly remember as a kid from reading other children's books. Like Christmas and Halloween were a big deal in books, and I loved seeing them. And then reading the Christmas and Halloween scenes in Morgan Crow just like really feels nostalgic for me. But that is the Where My Lore Started book tag. Thank you so much for watching. I would love to know what your answers are for these questions, if we had similar answers or if we had different answers. I feel like Carrie and I had like similar answers across the board, even though she's a couple of years older than me. I wonder if someone that's younger than me would have similar answers or if they would have very different answers. I kind of expected us to have different answers, but we didn't. So I was kind of surprised by that. I'd be really curious to see where there are differences in other age groups. Those are my answers for the questions. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again with another video soon. Bye!